It's Baseball Shangri-La with Amy Cuevas and Juan Ramirez. And welcome to another episode of Baseball Shangri-La. She is Amy Cuevas. I am Juan Ramirez. And if you're new to the show, you just realized this is now our second episode with our new theme song. Our theme song that was created by the great AJ Padilla. Please follow him on Instagram at Sederfu. Um, yeah, AJ came out there. I guess he listened to, I don't know even the full story, but I guess he listened to one of our earlier episodes from our launch. He took pity on us. He heard our pleas, like, please, we need a theme song. Don't make us keep singing our theme song, even though some people who watched the first episodes, they really liked the theme song. They thought it killed Amy.
I mean, I think they were being nice, but no, AJ he's a friend. He's an audio engineer. He's a musician, so he has an ear for music. So who knows? Maybe we were causing him great bodily harm when he was just trying to take in our podcast, and he was like, "Please let me help these people out." So thank you to AJ. Follow him on Instagram at like Juan said at Saterfoo. It's Saterfoo. So thank you so much for being our musical patron saint.
We can't thank you enough, AJ. You're doing the Lord's work. Amy, we got some actual Dodger news. This episode is actually going to be very baseball heavy, guys, because we can actually talk about some baseball stuff. So there's a couple of things that happened. So let's start first in chronological order, and that is Caleb Ferguson. One of the few remaining left-handers in the Dodgers bullpen was traded to the Yankees of New York, and he was traded for Matt Gage and Christian Sausueta Jr. So they basically got, if you want to call them prospects, because Matt Gage, I think Matt Gage is almost 30 years old. I believe he's like 29. But he has had some major league experience. He played 1 year with Toronto. Last year he was with the Astros. Now he didn't pitch that much last year with the Astros. I believe he ended up, he only
He
pitched.
was only in 5 games last year with
Yeah,
the
he pitched a
Astros.
little. He got 6 2/3 innings, but his ERA was under 3. It was 2.70. I know it's a very small sample size, but he's got some experience. And like everybody, like I was seeing on social media, everybody's convinced that Mark Pryor is going to turn Gage into something special. So look, I hope you guys are right. Amy, your initial thoughts on the fact that Caleb Ferguson is traded, and I want you to be honest with me, Amy, because I know that Caleb Ferguson made you a little nervous last year.
He did make me a little nervous, honestly, when I was going over his stats before we got together today. I'm surprised. Like, I know his debut was 2018, but it feels like it was a lot more recent than that. Like, he feels still pretty new, not this long. Because I remember seeing him on the mound that first time. Um, I, it is a bummer to lose him. He's been on the team for almost 7 years now. So, uh, but if we're gonna get Ryan Brasier back, I think as far as a reliever, he had a better year last year. So I think Caleb's gonna get a chance to shine with New York, or maybe he's a little bit. We have a lot of talent, even on in the reliever side. So maybe he'll get to do some work over there, and we'll get to see Brasier back once they officially make the announcement.
So my compadre is a big Yankees fan, and so when the trade happened, he reached out to me, and of course he wanted to know what can you tell me about Caleb Ferguson. And I think Caleb Ferguson had a very good year last year. I mean, his ERA was under 3, it was 2.84. And like he had his moments.
Last
He had
year,
some,
last year he was 3.43 ERA.
was it?
Yeah.
What? Okay,
It was a little rocky. He had 68 he was in 68 games, pitched about 60 innings. He had seven wins, 4 losses, but yeah, his overall ERA was 3.43, which is it coincides with his career ERA as well.
damn. Where I don't know where okay, my bad.
That
I don't
was
know where I was.
maybe he had a 182 the previous year, but
Well,
also
he
lefty.
was. I mean, he was great. But look, he was one of the few lefties that the Dodgers had. Now they only have Alex Vesia as the only true lefty. I know people are going to, oh, well, he got Ryan Yarbrough. I mean, we don't even know yet how the Dodgers are going to use Ryan Yarbrough, and that's a conversation that we're going to get into. But look, I thought Caleb Ferguson was very serviceable in that bullpen. I think part of the reason why Caleb Ferguson was traded is because I think that bullpen is starting to get a little crowded. When we were at Dodger Fest this weekend, Amy, I was a little surprised at the number of relievers that showed up there, and I think these are guys that the Dodgers are probably going to consider and maybe give them a shot in spring training. I'm going to go over the bullpen options in a minute. I just want to focus on Caleb Ferguson just for a couple more seconds.
Well, he's a free agent next year too, so that's something to take into consideration too.
Yeah, not only is he a free agent, but he's also out of options.
Mhm.
So if the Dodgers bullpen, let's say some of these younger kids perform the way they perform in spring training, that bullpen is going to get a little crowded. And obviously, the minute that trade happened, everybody's like, well, something's up. And we found out what was happening afterwards. But just again, one of the things to consider here, and look, the Dodgers have a lot of injured pitchers. They have Dustin May. They have Tony Gonsolin. We found out at Dodgers Fest that Nick Frasso is going to miss the whole season. And so there has been a lot made over the fact, well, the Dodgers can move these guys to the 60-day DL injured list, excuse me, and then they can go ahead and sign players. They can't do that, first of all, until February 8th. So they still have they still, actually, by the end of the week, they can go ahead and do that. So they'll probably wait until then, and then they'll go ahead and announce Brasier. But one of the other things that I find really interesting is it's because they have all these injured players and everybody assumes that this is what the plan is going to be. A player can't be placed on the 60-day IL unless a 40-man roster is full. Okay, and we know the 40-man roster is full, but then
Yeah, Matt Gage just took that spot vacated by Ferguson. So even when they want to move Brasier in, we've still got to make another move.
and the reason why Matt Gage took that spot is because Matt Gage was on the Yankees 40-man roster. So they can go ahead and move people to the 60-day if they need that roster spot in order to make a move. The only reason why I'm bringing it up is the Dodgers aren't going to sit here and all of a sudden move all their injured pitchers to the 60-day, because I know there's a lot of belief that the Dodgers are going to sign Kershaw and then they're going to move him to the 60-day. All I'm saying is these guys know they're playing chess. They know what they're going to do. But I thought that was very, very interesting. But I think Ferguson is going to be I think he's going to be very serviceable and effective for the Yankees. But I don't know. I'm the one who got his ERA wrong. I don't know. I know there was a lot of people that were low on Ferguson. I know he had some rough outings towards the end of the season. And maybe I'm just remembering the Ferguson from what you just said when he had his ERA was under 2. He was a guy that was nails.
But we got to keep in mind too, last year we did limp along. Yes, we won 100 games. We are spoiled. All of the good stuff. But we taxed our bullpen because we didn't have starting pitchers going very late into games, and as we know, we lost a bunch of starting pitchers. There were a lot of injuries. Tony Gonsolin pitched most of the season injured. Like, there was a lot going on, I think, that contributes to that. And you don't see that in the numbers. If I'm just looking at a stat sheet, that's not going to tell me anything. But there's a lot that how often did we use Ferguson? Did that play into it? So it would just, I think he's going to have a good shot over there with the Yankees. It'll be a bummer not to have him there to see how he would have done this year. But, there's all kinds of players that we have to say goodbye to that I wish we didn't. And, free agency or trades and whatnot. That's the nature of baseball, unfortunately.
Before we focus on Brasier, I do want to talk about the other person who just seems to be a throw-in this trade, and that is Christian Sausueta Jr., who is 19 years old. He'll turn 20 in October. But this is a Mexican kid. He's from Navajo. Do you guys know anybody who came from Navajo, Sonora, Navajo? Any pitchers from that area that ended up playing for the Dodgers? I love already people were just already like, oh well, he's got some good off speed pitches. The interesting thing is he played for the Yankees Dominican Summer League. So this kid is way too young. First of all, you really don't know what you have with this kid. He's still going to have to go through the whole Dodgers minor league system. But all we know is in terms of his Dominican Summer League numbers, he has an ERA of 3.29. He only pitched 52 innings. And again, the thing that I thought was interesting, he has 50 strikeouts. So maybe his curve and his slider will translate. Maybe again, everybody, Mark Pryor is the magic man. Once he gets into this Dodger system, the Dodgers seem to be developing these pitchers. And again, they may have found a diamond in a rough, but I am curious to see how he ends up panning out. But I think right now, I've even seen some things where people might consider Matt Gage might actually be in the Dodgers' plans in the bullpen this year.
I mean, I'm looking at some of his stats right now. So, a 2.70 ERA, I think. Hold on. Jumping pages here, but
yeah, from last year.
Yeah. He so overall, I mean, he's got some interesting numbers. So 270 ERA, 183 career. Like you said, small sample size game wise. He's only been in 16 games over the last 2 years. But again, maybe Mark Pryor can do some magic with him. We need work on the reliever side. I mean, we can always take more arms in the bullpen. So
right, and this is what the Dodgers do, right? They end up taking guys that you've never heard of, and they end up having great seasons. And a perfect example is so after the Ferguson trade happens, we get the news that the Dodgers signed Ryan Brasier. And Ryan Brasier was one of those guys that he was good for the Red Sox, and then the next season he would be bad for the Red Sox. He got released. He comes to the Dodgers, and he had a ridiculous season last year when he was pitching for the Dodgers. I mean, to have an ERA under 1, and he was their high leverage guy. He was the guy that they brought in rough situations to put the fire out.
He was in 39 games. Like, that's to have a less than 1 ERA and 39 games. That's impressive.
No, it's very impressive. So he ends up signing a 2-year, $9 million contract, and he has a chance to turn that into $13 million. Now, I like the number. Again, it's not my money, but there was a part of me that thought someone was going to overpay because of the numbers that he got last year. I mean, a 0.70 ERA, I thought somebody's going to end up throwing a lot of money at him. He's going to be priced out by the Dodgers. So I was a little bit surprised by the number on the contract, but should I be surprised?
Well, this is that one
this is what Andrew Friedman does.
So definitely in the front office we trust. Like, they know what they're doing. They're looking at the stats. I think my only holdback is, he has that really good year and then he has a couple off years. And I say this is somebody who can't pitch. But because he had that like overall 302 ERA last year, I mean, if you're combining the 729 at Boston and the under 1, that 0.70 with LA, maybe that means he's going on, if he follows the pattern, to have an even better year this year. So let's hope that's the case.
I mean, I do hope that's the case, because I think the Dodgers are really dependent, because a lot is being made of he has reverse splits. So this is a guy who can get left-handed hitters out. So the Dodgers are looking at it. And again, I think the Dodgers are hoping, all right, you're going to repeat what you did last year. And that's always a concern for me, because regression is always a possibility. There's always a chance that, you could, go back to being bad. So, but I think they saw something with him. They taught him something. I think they are expecting him to be able to do that. I think that's why they're okay with trading away a left-hander. I think they're because another guy, I believe, I don't know if his reverse splits are as drastic as Brazier's, but he does do well against left-handed hitters, is Brusdar Gratterall. And as I saw someone on social media say, well, if we have all right-handers in the bullpen, Dave Roberts won't have to worry about a righty-lefty matchup because it's like all I got is right-handers in the bullpen.
There's that. I think in this case, I think you can't go wrong, especially at the price. And again, not our money, but we've also had we had Tyler Anderson here. He had a great year, and then he went to the Angels and not quite as stellar. So maybe there is something to our pitching staff where maybe we can keep that up going into this year where, if he was going to sign somewhere else, maybe he would have a bum year, but maybe because he knows our staff, they know what they're doing with him, maybe that will keep that consistency going and he's going to have a great year.
Absolutely. Let's sit there and take a look at this bullpen now. The fact that Brazier's in and Ferguson's out. So this is what the bullpen is looking like to me, Amy. You tell me, because I think the interesting question that's going to be answered in spring training, we've heard a lot of talk about the Dodgers maybe using a 6-man rotation. I know people think that's what's probably best for Yamamoto because Yamamoto's used to pitching in a 6-man rotation. And I feel like the Dodgers do this anyways. Like they always find a way to give guys rest. But so far in the bullpen, in terms of like true relievers in the bullpen, you got Brusdar Gratterall, you got Evan Phillips, you got Joe Kelly. Alex Vesia now is the only left-hander, true left-hander reliever that they have there. You have Fierson, I'm sorry. I keep, and it's so funny. I met him this weekend and he went out of his way to tell me how to pronounce his last name. And here I am still butchering it.
And somebody, I think, corrected me on Saturday and I was saying Ferguson and they were like, no, I don't think that's how you say it. And I was like, okay.
So it is Ferguson, right?
I thought it was Ferguson. So who knows? He didn't correct me. Somebody else did. So take that with a grain of salt.
But here, okay, so then we have Blake Trinan. We have Blake Trinan. Michael Grove is that's a name that I keep forgetting because he pitched really well in relief, I thought, towards the end of last year. Kyle Hurt had those 2 great innings that has made him a legend now. So I think he's going to be in consideration for the running of this bullpen. And then they just got Matt Gage. Who knows? He might be an option. We saw Gus Varlin at Dodger Fest. Is Gus Varlin going to be an option? But, I mean, here are the 2 names that I think I've left off in terms of the bullpen. And that is Ryan Yarbrough, because I think Yarbrough is going to be the long man. I think that's how they're going to do this 6-man rotation. We saw how they did it last year where they would have an opener and then Yarbrough comes in and pitches 5 innings. That's why it's hard for me, even though he's left-handed, to consider him as a left-handed option in the bullpen, because I think he's going to be that long guy during the regular season to try to give Yamamoto some more rest.
Either that or they're going to use him as a piggyback. Like he may start even and not have an opener. And then, you're going to see somebody like Grove or I don't know, maybe Stone or somebody like piggyback.
I think it's Emmett Sheehan. Sheehan. He might be used to piggyback Emmett Sheehan. And then what will happen once Walker Buehler comes back? Because we learned that at Dodger Fest that the Dodgers are going to basically take their time, take it very easy with Buehler. So then when Buehler does eventually come back in the rotation, what happens to Emmett Sheehan? Where does he go? Does he go back down or do they put him in the bullpen? So there's a lot of options here. So because of all these options, I think that's the reason why they had to trade Ferguson, right? Because again, Ferguson doesn't have any more options. So you either put him on the roster to start the season because you can't send him down. So I think that's part of the reason why he was traded.
I think taking the chances, especially on somebody like Sheehan, who did, I still give this guy props. Like he came up from AA, skipped AAA all the way, and then came into the majors, had a couple hiccups, but he's a new guy. Like he's just coming up to the major league stage. So I think if he can stay up and continue to learn from some of the more veteran pitchers, I think he'd be a great option. Like if we did piggyback with Yarbrough and then himself, and then, if you have to fill in maybe one more inning or so with a reliever or closer, then, you've got that 6-day rotation.
I mean, one of the things that I realized from this weekend, from Dodgers Fest, from talking to a lot of Dodger players, is I talked a lot to Blake Triton today, this weekend, and I just completely forgot about him. I just, because he was injured the way he ended last season and trying to come back, and it just didn't happen for him. I just thought, well, but that guy he has really filthy stuff, and he's good against lefties.
He's a great pitcher. I'm bummed we lost him in 2022, and then we had that hiccup at the end of the year where we tried to bring him back, and that really did affect his ability, or actually inability, to even be able to pitch in 2023, and we didn't see him at all. But when he's healthy, when he's actually pitching, I mean, he would have had my vote to be a closer. Like, he was really, really good. Like, he had the numbers to back it up.
And of course, that's always the big question mark, right? It's Blake. I mean, he said it. He said this is the best he's felt in a few years. So you got to take him at his word and be like, okay, well, if he is healthy and he can pitch the way he's pitched in the past for that team, I mean, this bullpen is looking like it's going to be it's going to be a position of strength for them to be able to, in late inning games, you have Gratterall, you got Phillips. Say what you will about Joe Kelly, he's effectively wild. He can still get outs. I know a lot of people, especially guys who saw him pitch in Tampa, but Fayer Ryson, man, I feel so
We're
bad.
gonna that is our homework. We will get that right before the next episode.
Like, if he's right, I mean, it's looking like but that's the big question mark again,
Well, and
is
we've never gotten to see him yet. He's never even
yeah.
made his Dodger debut, so that'll be
But
interesting to see that.
these guys are all looking good, but I think the bullpen is one of those positions of strength. But again, unfortunately, the question marks of how these guys coming back from injury, how are they going to react? And also, and that's why, and this is what I wanted to ask you, Amy. That's why when everybody keeps saying the Dodgers need a closer and they were in on Hader, or they should go trade for Class A, or the big one, especially after Corbin Burns got traded to the Orioles, was go trade for Devin Williams. Now, look, Devin Williams is a great. I would love to have that guy closing my games, and maybe that's something that you go ahead and revisit at the trade deadline. But with the Brewers already trading Burns, is someone going to jump the gun because they're like, look, let's get him now, because the Dodgers are probably eyeing him at the trade deadline. I mean, do you agree with everybody that there is a desperate need for a closer?
I mean, we've survived for what, 2 years without one? I mean, we can make it work. I think sometimes it's nice to have a closer. You know that guy's gonna come in at the end of the game every day, right? You know who you've got to count on. But I think what we've seen play out too is, like, there are some situations where Evan Phillips is great as a setup guy. Like, he comes in a high leverage situation in the 7th or 8th and he saves the game, versus if we were just saving him as a closer. Like, no, he's a closer, we can't bring him in. And he might have been the best option at that time. And then, you bring in Joe Kelly in other situations where maybe this isn't such a bad thing. I don't think either way is wrong. But it has been working for us to not have a closer the last couple of years.
Yeah, look, I'm hearing everybody. Yes, I would love to have Devin Williams, and I am curious. Now, here's the other thing. So the Orioles gave up two prospects, but those prospects that they gave up were highly ranked prospects. And this is where you're going to start to see the difference, where everybody talks about how great the Dodgers farm system is. And maybe as a whole, the Dodgers farm system is fantastic, but they don't have maybe. I know Keith Law just recently released his prospect list, and there were some Dodger players on there, but I don't know if there was anybody in like the top 10 and stuff like that. So when you have
I think
other teams,
70s. I think we were like 70s and maybe a 90th spot. I'd have to go back and check my notes, but we
so
weren't top of it.
if you have other teams that maybe have higher ranked prospects or are dangling more sexy prospects, that's going to be tough to compete with. I do see the Dodgers maybe starting the season, at least going until May, to try to see what they have with this bullpen, because you never know what's going to happen, especially with health. Those resources that you have in the farm system, by the time the trade deadline comes, you may need to use them for something else. I mean, we saw last year. Last year they had so many needs that they had to address, and we saw how the season played itself out.
Well, we still have a couple that I don't know that we've had eyes on in the majors, but we've got Landon Knack, we've got Ricky Vanasco, I think. I want to say that there's one more because we only saw a little bit of Gus Farland. So even some of those guys that we haven't seen too much of, hopefully we'll get a little bit more eyes on them in spring training and see how they perform and, see if they stay on the roster or if they end up getting moved around.
The fact that Landon Knack was at Dodger Fest, I'm very curious if that means the Dodgers are seriously going to give him an opportunity in spring training to try to make this team, and that's what's going to be interesting in terms of now that they've made these trades. And are they done? I mean, the pitchers and catchers are reporting at the end of the week. They're reporting on Friday, and look, there's still things that may happen. I mean, last year. Was it last year or maybe it was the year when did they trade Pollock? Because they traded him in spring training.
Man.
I think it was the year. Yeah, it was the year before. It was the year before because they traded him for Kimbrel.
Yes.
So they're still the Dodgers may not be done. They still make moves. They still may make moves. So I just think they're in a great, with the offseason they had, they're in a great position right now where I know everybody is saying, go get Devin Williams, go get Devin Williams. And yes, you run the risk of some other team swooping in right now to get him. But I would like to see what this bullpen looks like with the names we already have.
We're leaps and bounds ahead of where I thought we would be, considering like salary and whatnot, how we approached the offseason the previous year. The fact that we have a starting rotation and we have arms in the bullpen is amazing to me, because as we all saw last year, we piecemealed it together and we made it to the postseason, but it was rough, some of those games. So I'm excited to see how it turns out.
No, absolutely. So I want to end this show, this episode with this. And I don't know if you saw this, Amy, but of course, Mookie Betts is catching strays. Mookie Betts just cannot say anything because everybody just looks to say something wrong. So at Dodger Fest, excuse me, Mookie Betts made the comment that when teams come to play the Dodgers, it's like their World Series. And of course, the rest of the on a national stage, the narrative was that this was a crazy story. That, I mean, not a crazy story, but a crazy comment.
Where's the lie?
And it's true. And it's maybe, and I know a lot of people use the Padres as the example of this, that when the Padres come in to play the Dodgers, they seem to play with a higher level of energy. Players that are hurt all of a sudden get healthy when they play the Dodgers. I just don't understand why this is such a big issue. Like, I don't think there is truth to the fact that teams will come in here and want to beat this super team. They want to be able to beat this team to prove to people you can't buy a championship. I mean, that's the national narrative that I hear is, this is why, they're the villains, right? Because, they're out there buying this World Series. And I just don't,
Isn't that the point though? Isn't that the point to win? Isn't that why we have all these rules? That's why there's things that are enforced in the CBA. So we have the competitive balance tax so that other teams can compete if they don't have as large of a market. Like, it just sometimes it smacks of hypocrisy to me, because it's horrible when the Dodgers do it, but then the Mets or the Padres go out and spend, and all of a sudden it's like, well, it's okay because we're going to try to win. Well, that's what the Dodgers are doing. That's what Mookie said. Like,
well, you know what's going to be the real test? The real test is how people start reacting to the Orioles, because as we all learned, the Orioles owner, he hasn't completely sold yet, Angelo, but he sold 40%. And once he's gone, then these new billionaires are going to have full ownership. But the minute he sells that stake, they make the deal. for Corbin Burns. So if the Orioles, who have a great farm system, if you believe everybody who ranks those, they're modeling themselves as the East Coast version of the Dodgers. So if the Orioles are following that template where they're going to use the farm system to replenish their team, and at the same time they're going to start throwing money at free agents, I want to see people come at the Orioles the same way people are coming at the Dodgers. It's like, oh, are the Orioles then going to become bad for baseball?
That's where the hypocrisy comes in, though. Like, but even if they do it, I won't even be mad at them. Like, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to take that revenue generated and put it back in the team. The Dodgers are doing that, and people seem to have a problem with it. And I don't understand why. I don't understand why Mookie's getting flack. I don't understand why the Dodgers are, other than they've always got a target on their back. Always. We talked about this before. You go to stadiums, like, to me, you should be there chanting for your team. Instead, you've got, like, a myriad of teams that'll have a beat LA chant. Like, shouldn't you be cheering for your own guys? Like, focus on you guys. But we're always going to have that target on our back. And I think a lot of the players, from what we heard from the interviews at Dodger Fest, is that everybody is really just embracing this, whatever this villain hood is. And it's like, all right, cool, whatever. We're still here to win. We're here to play. The goal is the World Series. It is every year. We've gone to the postseason 11 times. We've won 10 of them, outright. So we're going to keep doing what we're doing. Nothing's going to change that.
Yeah. So it is going to be interesting how the season progresses once we actually start seeing games, once we start seeing opposing teams, especially like those teams who maybe this is going to be the only time they play the Dodgers. So, yes, maybe this may not be like a World Series to the Giants because the Giants are going to see the Dodgers multiple times. But like anybody who watches the show, the Padres, they all know that the Padres, when the Dodgers come into town, they play up. They play up. So I just found it very interesting. All of a sudden, the amount of slander that Mookie was getting on the timeline, where I'm like, dude, I mean, this guy just can't catch a break. Like, the guy bowls, and they all hate him for bowling.
Let the
And then
man bowl.
But it's just like, this is what we signed up for. And, and that's the thing, right? Joe Kelly has always said this in the sense that, the players should be more open and just, say how they really feel. And then they say how they really feel, and people have problems with it. But
notice no Dodger fans had any problems with that. So the entire, it's not just LA fans. Like, Dodger fans are across the United States, they're international. So I guarantee you the majority of Dodger fans had no problem with Mookie's comment.
Yeah, this is all a national narrative, and I have to say again, I think this is good. I think that because you are literally you see that the rest of the country is all going to be rooting, against the Dodgers. They're going to want those teams to go in there, but I just can't stress enough that yes, the Dodgers spent over $1 billion on players. This guarantees nothing. We just sat here talking about, well, this is what the bullpen's going to look like. And what did we talk about most about the bullpen? The health. Well, if these guys stay healthy and they do what they're supposed to do, then they're going to be great. But can't you say that every year about Major League Baseball? It's dependent on health and them doing what they always do on the back of their baseball card. And if those two things go wrong, what do you do?
Well, and the road to the World Series, with the exception of when we won in 2020, I mean, we've made it there a couple times, 17, 18, but the road typically to the World Series is through the Dodgers. So whether other teams are playing that way through the season or they're playing that way in the postseason, it typically runs through LA. So nothing changes. It's just everybody getting used to that fact either a little sooner this season or, bristling at it. It's not going to change it. So.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Baseball Shangri-La. If you are coming across us for the very first time here on YouTube, hey, make sure you subscribe. Go back and watch some of our past episodes. Keep watching us. Tell your friends. Also, if you're listening on the audio portion of it, follow us on the social media. Let us that way you'll be up to date whenever we drop new episodes, because this is a new show. This is episode 5. I think, Amy, we're still trying to figure out, are we going to be on a schedule, or are we just going to do a show whenever we feel like it?
I mean, we're trying to commit to at least one a week, and then as news drops, like this week, we'll have 2 episodes, and, if schedules align, if we can throw in another one, we're gonna do our best to bring you guys content.
That's right. And we're going to try to make this show a lot more interactive, Amy, right? Can you tell the people how we're going to do that?
Yeah, so we will be doing we will have some YouTube lives. We're gonna again, you're on the journey with us. We're figuring all this out on our own. So we're gonna try our hand at Twitch as well. That way, if we're going live, you have multiple ways to engage with us. We'll also be at the stadium throughout the season. So we want to make sure that we can interact with you guys. And you can see our handles down here. So Twitter or X, it's at BB Shangri LA. IG, Threads, and then Twitch down the line as we do start to do those lives will be at Baseball Shangri LA.
And there you have it. So for this episode of Baseball Shangri LA, she is Amy Cuevas and I'm Juan Ramirez. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for hanging out with us.